Hi, welcome to San Francisco Weekly News. My name is Diane Smith. Thank you for joining us. The symbol that you see there, or the icon, is compassion. There's some Senate bills that are sorely lacking in compassion for human beings. We have a responsibility to our families, our community, to our society, to our country, to do the right thing, to operate in decency with integrity and honesty. There are two bills that are very concerning, or disconcerting. And one is SB 50. Well, let's do it in numerical order. The first one is SB 40. That's Senate Bill 40. And the other is SB 50. So, what is that? Let's talk about that. We've mentioned it before on our shows. SB 40 is a conservatorship detention program. That's what I call it. Let me first say to you, my baby brother is in the grave because of the SB 40, the conservatorship as it exists, and what they're proposing. I'm looking at this with a fine-tooth comb because I want to see, where did this conservatorship idea fail my brother? And I'm sure many of you have loved ones that you have lost. Either they are no longer living or they're like walking dead. And this is because of a lack of compassion for mental health issues. Conservatorship SB 40, which I also refer to as detention, because basically what will happen is a person with mental health issues will be treated as though they are a criminal. The mental health issues are not addressed. So SB 40 and SB 50, so SB 40, you pick a person up off the street, the police arrest them on something called a 5150, which means that they're having psychiatric difficulties. Okay? There's no treatment. There's no infrastructure for treatment in SB 40. Had there been infrastructure for treatment, there's no doubt in my mind that when they placed my brother into conservatorships, that he would be alive today, because there would have been an infrastructure. You just can't put him in conservatorship and then they jump around from one conservator to another. Where is the treatment for mental health? We must have compassion for mental health. The people that we're seeing out there, be they diagnosed, whether they have a diagnosis of mental health, or if they are an addict. A person with the disease of addiction, is also suffering from mental health. So we cannot solve the issue of homelessness with such a bill as SB 40, which has no infrastructure for mental health treatment, no infrastructure for housing. We are not going. Shall we see our tax dollars go to housing the mentally ill when the tax dollars were no longer there? They were released onto the street worse than ever. Many of us live that. Many of us had loved ones in Napa and other mental health facilities. I call them mental institutions. And when the former President Ronald Reagan in California cut back the money for mental health services, people were placed on the street. It's like taking someone out of their hospital bed and said, get up and go. And the person is deathly ill, cannot walk, cannot determine their own direction. True. SB 40, the premise is correct. People with mental health need help. They don't need detention and incarceration. Why is it that people with mental health are the only ones that are villainized? Why are they villains? Why are they considered criminals? This is the wrong approach. This is why we see our streets in San Francisco inundated, covered with homeless, including homeless feces and other things that come along with mental illness. So be very clear. If you don't know about mental illness, I invite you to find out, and then you will see people that are on the street a little differently with some compassion. That's what's needed. We need some compassion. This SB 1045 or SB 50 minus one has no compassion. There's none. And that's not okay. We will not incarcerate our citizens. We do need to protect our citizens. Many of our citizens are in need of conservatorship. However, conservatorship without mental health infrastructure, housing, and treatment is not okay. We must have compassion. We must have compassion for the homeless. Long-time disinvestment from low-income housing and mental health services has led to the severe crisis of homelessness that's playing out on our city streets today. Instead of addressing the root of the causes of the crisis, many of those in power have responded by rewarding speculators. Senator Scott Weiner has introduced two bills in the state Senate that would make the housing homeless crisis even worse. As I mentioned before on a previous airing show, Senate Bill 50, which it will increase the luxury apartment development. Senate Bill 40, which makes it easier to take a person's civil rights away through conservatorship. In a world where global wealth is siphoning off our communities, we need to resist exploitation, alienation, and criminalization of targeted residents and those who keep the city running. So we have this huge mental health crisis. We have this huge housing crisis. Those that help keep our city running can't even afford to live here. This is not acceptable. It is not acceptable. Teachers can't afford to find housing. Firemen can't afford to find housing. We need more and more firemen, firewomen, fire people all the time, and they can't live in the city where they work. They have the right to build families, all of them, and to live near their work and to access the services they need to survive and thrive. For decades, San Francisco tenant disability and homeless advocacy groups and community groups like the Bayview Hunters Point Real Estate Reps, the Bayview Hunters Point Citizens for Action, Citizens Participation, ABU, many groups. Well, ABU's emphasis is on jobs. But you can't get a place to live. You can't get housing without employment or assistance. So the bottom line is still the housing crisis. The light has been shed on tenants becoming homeless or dying as a direct result of eviction. SB 50 will allow eviction. SB 40 will allow eviction. How? If a person is deemed incapable and there's no infrastructure there to help address their mental health needs, to help them get better, they will lose their apartment. When they're released, where do they go? To the street. So the city sweeps need to stop. Unless you're going to sweep, after you sweep, then what do? Something has to be done. We don't just put it in a human disposal. So we're re-traumatizing. You pick the people up off the street. Referring to SB 40. You pick them up off the street. Okay, they have mental illness in one form or another. Again, be it drug addiction or be it non-drug addiction. It's still mental health, a mental health problem. And when the sweeps constantly re-traumatize people, these residents already have to endure the unimaginable every day. Do we have any idea? Let me move over. Do you have any idea what the homeless go through every day on the street? I don't. I have a pretty good idea, but the unmanageability aspect of it. Can you sleep? Where do you bathe? What do women do to protect themselves? What do men do to protect themselves? Unfortunately, it seems Scott Weiner and his supporters are making moves to displace or detain poor folks rather than let them determine what's best for them in their communities. Now, SB 50 says that people cannot determine what's best for their communities. SB 50 says that developers, speculators, money grabbers, the greedy can determine what's best for our communities, and we will have no say-so if SB 50 passes. This is why we're uniting to demand that poor and working class families have the right to the city and to self-determination. SB 50 incentivizes more luxury development all over San Francisco, which will inflate property values and encourage landlords to harass tenants out so that they can inflate the rents. Let's be real. This leads to more evictions, which leads to more homelessness in a city that has truly no affordable housing left, and a shelter wait list of over 1,200 names every day. That's just what's counted. Some people walk away from the shelters because they know they can't get in. Approximately 70% of our homeless residents used to be tenants in San Francisco, as we've mentioned before. And long-term black tenants have been hit particularly hard. This should be a wake-up call to stop displacement and build housing for poor people, people low income, middle income, working poor. Not to build more market rate housing in a city that already is meeting the goals for luxury development. The goals for luxury development have been met in San Francisco. Where are the goals for affordable housing? We must meet the goals for affordable housing in San Francisco. Now is not the time to make matters worse. Now is the time to stop real estate speculation and redistribute the wealth through progressive taxation. What does that mean? Progressive taxation. If you have more, you pay more. The recent campaign by luxury condo owners to prevent a homeless shelter from being built in the Embarcadero is indicative of the hateful, exclusionary climate that often accompanies expensive housing. It is in this climate that Mayor Breed has cracked down on visible homelessness, throwing away residents' tents, their only shelter from cold and rain, instead of addressing the heart of the problem. Disinvestment, rampant inequality, housing financialization. That's a new word I saw, but it works for me because housing is now financialized. In other words, no money, no housing. Wrong. Not acceptable. Un-American. Un-San Francisco. Throwing away their tents, disinvestment, rampant inequality, black housing discrimination and black gentrification, lack of real affordable housing. Now, folks, you know I'm a licensed real estate broker. My specialty and expertise is in affordable housing. Of course, I will probably none of us that are affordable housing specialists have yet to be invited to assist with planning affordable housing. We're talking about real affordable housing in accordance with the California Health and Safety Law, which says that every Californian should be afforded the right to housing, meeting their income level for the very low, the low, middle, and middle income. Many of us are familiar with these laws. We offer our assistance. We will assist because we will not idly sit by and see so many people disenfranchised and see the law blatantly broken. Middle-aged seniors are in trouble. They can't find a place to live. the middle-aged and seniors as well, and who have worked in this city or lived in this city all their lives. Also, other people of color and also poor people who have been here all their lives. For those who service our city, the San Francisco Fire Department, our teachers, etc., as we mentioned earlier, our police officers, our emergency ambulance, our emergency services. Also, we have to address vacancy control. There's a game, folks, that people play. We have a lot of vacancies in San Francisco, but landlords are holding out for higher rents. So landlords, as a landowner, I understand I understand building wealth. However, we do not have the right to build wealth with exclusionary practices. I do not find it strange at all or odd at all that now that it's time to fight for people of color, for poor people, most of them have already been removed from San Francisco. That's how it works. Now they want to build a world-class waterfront on land that they've allowed to deteriorate. And that's how it works, folks. First they let the land deteriorate, then they say, oh, we have to rebuild. Let's reinvest. Let me just touch, we're going to wrap up soon, but let's take a look at this again. Open wide and say hub housing. Hub housing, that's SB 50. What they're saying is if you live around a hub that they can build up to 5 stories of luxury apartments. They didn't say affordable, they said luxury apartments. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Luxury apartments is toxic. SB 50 is toxic luxury apartments. These toxic luxury apartments that are proposed under SB 50, which will give builders free reign. You'll have no say-so about what happens in your own community. That is not the democratic process. That is not the American way. We must make America right again. The recent campaign by luxury condo owners to prevent homeless shelters from being built in the Embarcadero is indicative, as I mentioned before, of the hateful, exclusionary climate that often accompanies expensive housing. When people have a lot of money, they don't care about the poor, generally. Now, we have philanthropists, we have people that do care, but what we saw was the hateful look of those that have, who did not want to help or assist those who do not have. We saw that when Mayor Breed proposed the homeless shelter. Folks, rather than offering adequate treatment and housing for our homeless neighbors, SB 40, because see, 40 and 50 are tied together, because they both lack compassion. Rather than offering adequate treatment and housing for our homeless neighbors, adequate treatment and housing for homeless neighbors, SB 40 broadens 1045 to put homeless residents under a new form of state conservatorship, stripping them of their autonomy instead of expanding much-needed mental health services and housing options. This new conservatorship no longer relies on the determination of harm to self and others. It simply uses the number of detentions by police under the 5150 code. We're going to continue this on our next episode, but we have to run this series, this episode for the month of June, because it is crucial that we have compassion. We must have compassion for our fellow human beings and our children and those that are the least, that have the least in our society. As a native San Franciscan and now an elder, I became an elder. Well, I am, and I'm a proud elder, and I'm proud to have compassion. I'm proud to have been raised in a community where we loved each other. We're going to bring the love back. We're going to bring the compassion back. SB 40, conservatorship detention with no infrastructure for affordable housing, with no infrastructure for mental health services, is not acceptable. SB 50, which is not mentioned there today, but SB 50 is a luxury condo pass. You have no say-so. We have met our requirement again for luxury development. We must meet our requirement. We must meet our obligation. We must meet our responsibility to affordable housing for those in need. I'm Diane Wesley Smith. Thank you for joining us. Please educate yourself, attend the Board of Supervisors meetings, find out what's going on and how you can help. Make a phone call. I want to leave you with a phone number. Well, call 311 and ask for the Board of Supervisors, find out the name of your supervisor, and also call Mayor London Breed and encourage her to keep up the good work. Okay, because she's going to need the support of all of us. We must have homeless shelters. We must have infrastructure. We cannot have SB 40, which will detain people, which does not address does not address mental health services, which the only way you can really address homelessness is to address the mental health services. SB 50 does not work. It is not an accountable build. There is no built-in infrastructure. It's only luxury housing. There's no affordable housing commitment. These things are not acceptable. Let's have compassion. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.